Hello everyone, welcome back to the KMTRADERS channel. So this is the full market analysis volume 89. Again, giving you an insight and using our previous analysis from last week and comparing that, and also give you an insight for this week. So we are going to start off with gold and just work our way through the pairs like usual. So starting off with gold. So what we looked at last week was a possibility of price dropping lower. And essentially what we're looking out for is this turnaround in price action. So we can see prices pretty much dropped off nicely, and it actually ended up into where we kind of looked, where we drew. Again, these weren't anything in particular. These are just last week they were just drawn out of out of guess. So don't think that these drawings are made to exact points and turnarounds. So essentially what we're looking at for this week and then is pretty much, can price action switch up towards the upside, and if so, we could be looking at price for our first target just around 1850, 1830 range. So pretty much this zone here, which is where I'd like to target. But ideally, I think that if we can get here, there is a possibility of price pushing. Either one thing can happen. So let me just extend this a bit. So one of two things will happen. So we'll either get really strong price action and we'll see a price continuation higher, or the second thing is we'll get into this area and we may just push up just a little bit higher but then reject and start to crash down. So they're just the two things I'm being mindful if we do get to this point here. But again, that's just just a bit future telling, and just like some advanced moves that you could be expecting once you get to this area. So again, it's just worthwhile to be mindful. So you could even just set some take profits here if you really did want to. But yeah, so ideally what I'm going to be trying to do is to see if we can look for a buying situation here. So we may get price to drop just a little bit further down, or it could just pretty much, this could be the turning point right now and price can just rally up. And if so, like I said, we're just going to target this zone here and see what happens from this point. But yeah, pretty much I'm bullish on this pair for now, and it's pretty much bullish until unless we break this zone here. So it's at 1680. If we break below this, we could be looking at bearish scenarios, and in that case we'll have to update our pairs for you guys. But anyway, so moving on to EURJPY. So again, what we looked at last week was price to drop off but make this turnaround. So I'm not entirely too sure if this is now the move towards the upside, but what I'm looking into is essentially some buying positions to see if we can ride price action into at least 1.19. so again, this zone here. But yeah, so what I'm trying to see here is if price can start to really push up aggressively higher. So maybe in the week we can look at some moves towards the upside and look at some buying positions. So that would either mean that price would need to drop just a bit lower, or this will be it, and then price would swing towards the upside. So that's what I'm trying to look out for here for EURJPY. And again, this buying situation, I'm comfortable enough to take a buy as long as we stay above 1.166. So again, this low here. So really, if we go below this, there is a possibility of looking at a retest, and that's where I will probably have to update the group. And again, if we do break the low, we're going to be looking at 1.16 as the target for the low. But again, that's if price does break this low right now. But for now, I'm thinking price still has this ability to push up higher as long as we stay above this low here. So that's where I stand with EURJPY. Let's take a look at NZDUSD. So it's going to be a similar situation. Again, I'm looking for price to essentially drop lower, maybe potentially, but what we're trying to look out for is price to really rally towards the upside. So we can see price action already rapidly pushing up higher, so maybe this could be the low of the market. and it's already switching towards the upside, so that could be one way to look at the market. But I think there is a possibility of price dropping lower, so I'm not going to rush into this trade. If we do get a break lower, again, it's not to scale these drawings, it's just a matter of wherever price action turns around, that's where we're going to look into. But essentially, I think the price could drop lower just a little bit further before making its way towards the upside, so that could nicely tie in with gold and EURJPY. So that's where I stand with that. And again, I'm looking at a buy scenario still, as long as we stay above this low here, so roughly at 0.68, and that's for the NZDUSD. So moving on to AUDUSD. Again, a similar situation. I'm looking for price to ultimately turn up towards the upside. So we've got this area to play in. So whether the price, maybe drops once more and then switches towards the upside, that's something that we can be mindful of. But I am looking at a buying opportunity, and as long as we stay above 0.71, so this low, we should be keeping up with price action pushing higher. So I think there is a possibility of price dropping lower, so I am going to keep that in mind and just really see where we stand with it. But for now, yeah, we're still bullish on this, and we're going to try and find some buy scenarios. So moving on to USDJPY. So what we can see here is price pushing up higher. Again, I was pretty much looking at this scenario or this pair in particular, and I wasn't really too sure if we were going to get a drop to the downside. But as we can see, price is pushing up higher. So what I'm looking into is for price to potentially push just a little bit more higher, and there is a possibility of a sell setup, and that's what we had drawn out here. So I'm just moving things aside, but essentially things are kind of going the way that we expect, or our first scenario, in the sense where price would push up. So what I'm trying to do now is to look at 111 and to see if this zone has any type of reaction, and this, again, this sell setup is only going to be valid as long as we stay below this zone here. So essentially we're going to try and look at some sell setups, but if we start to see price action break this zone, and we go higher, then what we'll end up doing is probably just looking out for some bullish setups, but in that case we would have missed it, so we would probably have to go back and come back to you guys with an analysis video, so most likely next week. But that's fine, because like I said, these setups happen all the time, so we just have to take a step back and see what our opportunity is. But yeah, like I said, as long as we stay below this zone here, I'm going to be looking at sell setups, and in terms of roughly where I'm targeting is around 108.5, so around here, so pretty much to take out this low here. So let me just plot a zone, so around here, so that would be a nice area to look at, but pretty much that's where I'm looking for a drop. So if we were to take some sort of pip count, so let's say at 111 we managed to take a sell, we take it all the way to the downside, roughly around 200 pips, so it's a good enough reward. But again, we have to stay patient for this, because we can see some nice bullish activity. So again, this could instantly rapidly push above here, so that's why we have to wait for price to potentially slow down at some point. But yeah, we'll see what happens with this, but that's kind of my thoughts so far on UJ. So looking at CADJPY, so what we looked at last week was potentially price dropping lower. Again, I couldn't really make sense of this. This is why I had two scenarios here, but we ended up seeing price rally up. So what we could now look for this is a potential drop off in the market, and then we could be looking at some buying opportunities here. So just as we can see prices rallying up, ideally what we could expect is 88 being tested and then it start to drop off, and if so, we could look at some buying opportunities for that long-term push up higher, in the sense where we looking to target 91. But again, a bullish scenario is going to be confirmed if we break this zone here. So For now, I'm looking at bullish scenarios, and as long as we stay above 84.5, so this low here, we should be adamant that we are turning over into the market. So and again, I'm liking how bullish price action is right now, so we'll see if this can still hold and continue towards the upside. So for now, I think I'll get rid of this downside opportunity because it will take a lot of price action to get here, but of course, just use your due diligence in case price does break this low. We will give you guys another video updates. Okay, so moving on to EJ. So take a look at this one. So for this, price actually made a double bottom here, very clean. So I wasn't really too sure if I should have taken a buy. I did mention this in my group. But essentially I just wanted to confirm because it did test this once, but as you can see, price rapidly retraced and essentially had a lot of bullish price action. So what I'm going to use this for now then is let me just get rid of this, get rid of that and this. So what I'm going to look at for now is essentially price to drop off as it's pushing up higher. So price will most likely continue to push up higher, and then eventually it will start to come back down again, and that's where we can make our potential buying entries. So that's what I'm going to probably look out for next week or so. But again, this could take some time, so maybe in the next week or two we could look at a nice buying opportunity. But again, this one's going to potentially be a slow one, but it really just depends how much price wants to push up higher, and again, if how long it takes to essentially retrace and make a new low. So that's what I'm going to be looking out for. And again, this setup for a buy is going to be valid unless we break this low here, so at 128. But until then, I'm still happy to look at some buying opportunities, so still stay patient with this one. NZDJPY, again, what we spoke at is price potentially pushing up higher to break 80, or we'll either get a rejection and we'll get a breakdown, and that's where we can look at a retest to break low. So I'm still going to keep this scenario here on the side, just as a little in case, like a second scenario basis. But as we can see, price is pushing up higher, so you could actually look at some potential buying opportunities along the way. So we'll see what happens here. We could get a nice drop off, or we'll see what happens really, but ideally it's roughly going to be around the 79 area. So if I just extend this higher, so at this 79 area we could be looking out for some sort of rejection here. So this is where we'll either get the rejection scenario, in sense where we wait for price to break down and then we look at a retest to break lower, or we'll get price to continuously break this zone and it will break higher than 80. So that's again the two scenarios that I'm just keeping an eye out for. AUDJPY, excuse me, just taking a bit of water. So essentially I'm looking for price to rally towards the upside. Again, we spoke about this from last week, that we were looking for price to drop lower. So as we can see now, price is actually looking as if it has turned over. I am potentially just keeping my eye out for any retests along the way. So again, what that means is price to drop off, make a new low, and that's where we can look at taking a buy, and hopefully we can break 82. Maybe just push this up a little bit higher, but roughly around 82. That's if we start to break above 82, that I think that we could be looking at some nice bullish opportunities to potentially go into 86. So again, I'm not saying if we do get a buy here that we hold it all the way up here. Again, it's about just trailing your stop losses, etc. But so yeah, buying opportunities, I'm quite happy to take a buy as long as we stay above this low, so 78. And we'll see how far we can continually push higher with that one. So yeah, we'll see what we've got up for next week. Coming to the last two pairs then, USDCHF. So for this, again, as we hit that 93 barrier, we've kind of stumbled into some sort of rejection. So we can see prices potentially turning over. So what I am looking into is for price to possibly make a drop lower before pushing higher, and that could be our nice little opportunity to take in on a buy on this. And like I said here in the second scenario, is that if we do get above the 93 area, we could be looking at some sort of rejection and potentially crashing lower. And again, that's if we, and essentially this scenario could occur, but if it breaks this zone here, so essentially it's 90, nearly 0.945. If we do break above this, then we could be looking at an alternative bullish scenario, in the sense where we look at a retest. So essentially what I just deleted, but basically that. But as we have this space yet left to fill, there is a possibility that we could have a massive turnaround, and in that case, where we could look at taking a sell opportunity into the downside. So we could have something like so, and that's obviously if we find some strength, some strong rejections. But for now, I'm keen to take on some buying opportunities as we're pushing up higher, because we've got a lot of space to fill anyway. So so we'll see what happens, but essentially potentially looking at a dip, so price to possibly drop lower, and maybe we can look at a buy. So that's something that I'm going to keep my eye out for, potentially for USDCHF. But in terms of all the other setups, this one's going to be quite a difficult one. So don't feel like you have to trade every single pair that we talk about. I would probably put this in the back of the setup so far, because this one is quite very choppy right now, so it's not very clear. And finally, for this week's video, USDCAD. Essentially, I'm looking for price to potentially turn up towards the upside, and this is one scenario that we've got here. But the second scenario was that we could expect price to turn around. So ideally, what I was thinking was price to make one more push up towards the upside before turning over, but as you can see, prices turn over quite drastically. So what we could expect is for price to potentially turn up from here. So we could have a little buying opportunity, but that's only if we stay above 126, so roughly this zone here. So if we stay above 126 and we can reject this zone, we should be able to look at a nice buying opportunity. And in that case, we could be looking at price to break this high that I was talking about from last week. And in that case, then we could be looking at one or two scenarios. And that is, if we get a buy, are we going to break this 1295 barrier? And if so, then we'll be looking at this scenario where we look at a retest to push up higher. But if we start to reject it, then we could be looking at price to drop lower and to come into roughly 125, or even a lot lower than that. So they're pretty much my two scenarios that I'm looking at. Again, it's going to be quite difficult for this one because it's going to be very tight here, but this could be a trading opportunity to look out for. So if we do break 1.26, then there is a possibility that price is just going to continuously drop lower, and in that case, then we could look at a retest here. So it's quite messy how I've drawn it, but again, we've got one scenario here, the second scenario here, and then the third scenario here. So most likely one of these two will happen first, and we'll see exactly what unfolds. But again, this is why we have these videos, just to run through some scenarios for you guys, so that you pretty much don't feel like you're lost in terms of the potential setups that we're looking into. But yeah, guys, I do appreciate your time for listening. If you made it all to the end of this video, we do have a trading group that you can join. That link is in the description. If you have any other questions, feel free to let me know in the comment section below, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. So guys, thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you all in our next week's video.